cheated a little bit on this one. I think it's not a little bit slow on the back right now.
Just like another person that helped me a whole lot. He was about 10 years older than me, and he was a tremendous machinist, and showed us a whole lot about building race car engines. And I built race car engines from 1951 to 75. September 1975 when I built my last race car engine. And I know what it takes to keep an engine together, turning them 7,000 plus. And Steve, he knows too now, you know. And he doesn't cut any shortcuts, no shortcut. We don't aim to cut no shortcuts whatsoever when we're building something, because it don't pay.
Is that your old dyno you set up?
Yeah.
You'll have to show him how that works.
Okay. This here is a 250 Chevrolet engine that come off of an oil distributor truck on the back. And whenever we were working on a slope nose or anything in the early 20s and the very early, mostly all in the 20s, or high wheeler, we got an adapter on here that we put, and we set the engine over here. I am not able to crank those vehicles no more. We build them and then we set them, hook this thing up to, and we run this thing in low gear or reverse to turn the engines fast enough to get them started and get a little bit of break-in times, and then you can just get them so you can just 1/4 of a turn, they're off and gone then. But before that time, you have to have something to limber them up a little bit. We get this stuff in the rough, and then we finish it up, and it's cab liners is what it is, for all D models and K models. And then we've got these little ones, complete interiors for C models. This is a complete cab liner for a C.
Around your back window.
What?
Let's go around your back window.
Yeah. It's complete. But you see that there isn't very two C model cabs that is kosher. You've got some different, like we found out these holes here are the original type holes that was for the kick panel. And see, they didn't, they don't have them, and then like on the, on your top and your sides that fit down around the doors, you got to make your own. These go over the top, above the doors.
Right.
And
got your left and your right here. Got your left and your right here.
Yeah, and I've got a pattern in the making for the biggest part of the drilling, that's what this is for. But some of them don't have any. This is for the deluxe C models, 34 through 36. And they went together in the wood frame up high and down in the middle, and you put them on with wood, stainless steel wood screws with the little
washer,
the little concave washer. And see, for years and years there wasn't nothing like this available anywhere. Actually, the D models, except Pat Walsh out in New York, and he was getting $600 and $800 a kit for them. And after this fellow made them for us down in Arkansas, we started selling them for $254.
Right.
You know, they rough them out and we finish them.
Right.
And you know, if somebody needs something in that respect, we've got it installed. The same way with the D's and the big K's. Take exactly the same liner from 1937 to 1950. Covers a lot of ground. Then this. You know, okay, this is one that's about half done.
That's what, a D30?
Huh?
That's a D30?
D35.
Say that's your favorite, the red with the black fenders.
Well, the first D model I ever saw in my life was a red 37 International pickup.
Right.
And I was working for these people. And when I seen them, I fell in love with them.
Right.
And I ain't changed my mind one bit since then.
Now which engine we have in this one?
This one here is a 4. Right now my mind's not working good at all. 246.
246. One thing that do you have any of the mirror brackets that go on the hinge of the L and the R models?
No, I have them for the D model pickup.
Oh, okay.
I make them.
Oh, really?
Right and left. They never come with the right one at all.
Right. Now can't you just simply reverse that?
Huh?
Can you turn that upside down and make it fit on the right side?
No. His name was Gordon Shuck. And the thing of it was, he was in a rest home when I bought it. And when I started restoring it, I thought I'd get it done. But he fell in the bathtub and broke his neck.
Oh, heck.
But his wife was going blind, and she done a lot of the driving. She come out here one day after I got it done, and she fell of all the thinners and everything. You know, she couldn't see very good. Oh, my. She said, I wished I could see the driving again.
So you got loaded down. Where did the name Gordon come from, Pappy?
From the man that owned it. And I thought he would live. He was in a rest home, and I bought it off of him. It was a farm truck. And I put this rollback on it. I have a lift pump in every vehicle I own, because a lot of times I sit around for 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and then it saves a lot of grinding and cranking and running down your battery and ruining your starter. helps keep the back of the bed from dragging on the ground. That's an Arkansas dummy. We've used them for years and years on dump trucks and stuff around in this part of the woods. And whenever you go way over what the truck is designed to build, it helps keep the dead off the highway, the back of the bed.
So that's a custom design?
Huh?
That's a custom design?
No, it's all international, but it's not in the same vintage. That that front axle is in there is a 1966 one-ton with the 17-inch wheels on it. It's really a saver out on the highway when you're heavily loaded on a rough road. The engine that was originally in this vehicle, it had a 250 Blue Diamond in it, and we was going to start hauling trucks that I was buying, and so the first few trips we made, we decided to build an engine for it. So we started out with a 308, about a 57 308, and blueprinted it and balanced it and changed the carburation system on it, and you finally got something that moved along on the road. Not real fast, but had the power to pull it. When I was running empty with the 250, running 50 miles an hour, it made 4.5 to 5 miles a gallon on gasoline. And after we rebuilt that 308 and lifted it up, we could make 10 miles of the gallon running empty. And about 4 miles worth of load, one on the bed and one on the trailer on the back. My adopted children from ages back, and her new name is the K5 widow, Ewing, and this is Dr. Ewing here. And we get along real decent. And thank God that God sent me those people.
And the same goes for you.
That's right. That's right. We've had lots of cookies and pie and eggs packed. We've had lots of cookies and pie making through the past.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And Mrs. P has been like a mother to me. And helped me when my parents died. They're both precious to us.
I was driving race cars from 1951 to 1975, and about the last 5 years that I drove, I was the oldest driver in the circuit. And I quit when I was 52, give my heart to God, and here I am today still pulling wrenches, which I said one time I would never do again, back in 1945. That's where I got the word, they called me the old Pappy, the racer. I bought a brand new one in 1949 for $2,640 with a 5-speed over 2-spare radiator and a pair of saddle tanks. $2,640.
I'll give you that from Gordon.
Gordon ain't going nowhere.
Tell us about this one, Pappy.
Huh?
Tell us the story on this one. I've never seen this one.
Well, this is a piece of junk we got out of Arkansas a few years ago, and the first time it had been put on the street was last week. I think it was Saturday. It has never been out on the road yet. It's not quite finished. It's a 39 D2, and the tailgate, I made that like I did the old green, you know.
Oh, really?
Made a thick double wall.
Great.
But see, here's one of the right-hand mirrors. That's a handcrafted, what I talked about.
Now those are similar to a D model or a C.
Huh?
Those are similar to a C model, but they're different, aren't they?
No, a C model come out through the top.
Oh, okay, you're right. But I was thinking the pickup. No, you're talking about C30. How
Yeah,
about the
C30s, but the pickups.
How about the smaller C model though?
Huh?
How about the smaller, like the C2? Like your little red pickup you had. What kind of?
Well, that 34, that was a 34 C1.
Yeah.
But these.
Well, this will never replace the old green one you had, though, will it?
There will never be another truck in the United States that will take its place.
You're right. You're right.
But it was a 65 mile an hour pickup.
Can you still get these tail lights?
Yeah, I got them installed.
Oh, you will. I didn't know
And the brackets, and the brackets. I got a drill press there that was made in the late 1800s. And you can do miracles with that old drill press that they don't make them anymore like that. You can use an 1/8 inch bit up to 1.5 inches bit by gearing it right. And you can drill right through the heaviest truck spring that there is without any problem whatsoever. And we use it daily, putting there. And people come here and borrow it. You know, they come and bring their own stuff and drill here. That bit's a little too long. Run a lot slower than that by gearing down. I bought it in 1951 or 52 at a sale. An old blacksmith shop went out of business, the man died, and all this stuff run from an overhead line shaft. It and the lathe, some other tools.
Why don't you go show us your lathe now? Let's see what that looks like.
What?
Let's see the lathe now.
Okay. This was also on the same line shaft as the drill. It's in good working order. You still have to learn how to lean to it with the problems that you got once in a while. But at least we get the job done. We make drive shafts and a lot of stuff like that with the old lathe. But, not as much as we used to. Here's a bench grinder that I got the same day that I got that other stuff from that blacksmith shop. And it's a monster too. You can grind about anything, and one side's a buffing wheel on the other side. And but it's always been electric. It was a more modern grinder. We got a few parts upstairs, if you'd like to take a look at that.
Sure.
Pretty steep here, and you got leather shoes, you ain't got no business coming up it. You don't have. I won't let anybody try to walk up there with leather shoes, so it's just different parts, and most all relates to the C, the D, and the K model. $35, $34, $35, $36. C35s, C40, there's a radiator, and your K6 and 7 axles, and then some C model axles, half-ton C model, and different radiators in the C's, the D's, and the K's, and the bigger trucks, the ton, a ton and a half, and bigger and smaller. And the small trucks, you know, this is all used, these axles and stuff's all used axles. But some people's real glad to get their fingers on them when they break one. And the bearings and pistons and water pumps and all that stuff, all up and down here, and then on all of these shelves, all these cabinets have got parts in them. We try to keep about everything. For building engines from 1934 in stock up to 1950.
You ever get stumped? Anybody ever come up with something you don't have? Ever come up with something that you don't have?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What we don't have, we either farm out somewhere. I know wherever one there is in the United States that makes stuff, and I'm friends to all of them, and I know where the parts supply is stacked, and so we get on Mr. Phone and have a visit. And engine bearings and stuff like that, and valves that we don't have, we depend on Mr. Tom Underwood over at Lawrence, Kansas for the parts on that part. And on the high wheelers, we have to make most of everything that we do for them, like new pistons and stuff has to be made. And the crankshaft work, we send them to Kansas City and have them built back up to standard and put re-babbitt them, or put new brass bearings in them, however they came at this particular time. You can't furnish everything, but we can always build an engine complete, regardless of how old it is. We have all the rubber seals, windshield seals, the door seals, the windshield seals, the back glass seals, and floor mats, and firewalls and everything from 1934 up in this, all this stuff we bought in the big rolls and 100-foot rolls and 50-foot rolls, and make our own whatever the need is. We think we have every rubber seal that there is from 34 up to 53.
Now, I don't know that much about it, but why do you stop in 1953? I don't know that much about it, but why do you stop in 1953?
Well, I'm born and raised with this old stuff, and I'm 86 years old, and I kind of lean toward that old stuff. Something that I know something about. So that's about the story in that. We got quite a bit of high-wheeler stuff, too. Just an everyday job.
All right, this is my 1939 International D2, and this truck used to belong to Pappy, and I'll let him tell you where he found it in the woods and what kind of condition it was in.
Jeff come along here one day, and I had my D2 in the shop for something, and he said, well, I would like to have a D2. And I said, you want to restore one? Yeah. I said, well, walk across the street over there at that third house and go down there, and in behind that house there's a garage, and open the door and see what you think. He's gone about 15 minutes and come back. He says, does it run? I said, just barely, when I put it in there. Well, he said, I would like it. So we took a truck over there, and we took some gas over there and put in it, and we pulled it back out of there, and we drove it from down there over here from the house on its own power, barely. It just barely had enough power to pull itself. And it had been in the woods for many, many, many years, and the squirrels was using the inside of it for a hotel, and it was full of shells, hippie nut shells and walnut shells. After they got through eating, they just went off and left them all right underneath the seat. And of course the moisture and stuff got in underneath the seat, and the shells and stuff, I had to put a new floor out of the grass.
Can you tell us about this Knox bed, why International had that?
Well, International, right after World War II, they were short of steel. And the government had a tremendous amount of ship decking left over. And so they contracted it all out to Knox Bed Company in Knoxville, Tennessee, and all the metal, they had two kinds of metal. They had the flat steel, and they had the one that was made out of corrugated steel, which was nothing but ship decking that they had during the war. And those are the trucks that are really sturdy. Those ones with the corrugated floor, corrugated sides, and the smooth tailgate. And that's where when they started using the Knox bed, because they was making trucks so fast they couldn't make their own beds, and that's the reason they International bought contracts from Knox Bed to build a whole bunch of them.
Well, you guys can probably remember a few engines that maybe was a little harder than the others. It gave you some problems, and you all kept at it. and you whipped it.
Well, we had some of them little high-wheeler engines that we had problems getting them to run. Other than that, you know. Right now, we got problems with this international pickup sitting over here, but we ain't whipped yet. We'll get it.
You'll get it, I know it. You guys don't give up.
No, no, we just keep working on it till you get it.
Pappy's got a lot of patience when it comes to figuring things out.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of got that legally. If you think I got patience, you ought to seen my brother 50 years ago.
Bill?
Yeah, he died with a stroke here about 10 years ago. But I've seen him work for a half or a 3/4 of a day on a lump on a hood or something like that. The metal was swelled on it. He got tinkered with it, and the water and the torch and the rag. And the first thing you know, he had it right, you know.
Yeah, Bill was pretty patient with anything he done.
It takes a lot of patience to be able to exist and keep your right mind. That's the problem. Because there's so much static going on out in the world about the reason this ain't no good and the reason that ain't no good, you know, the engines and stuff. They're all pretty doggone good if they're right. I mean, they're all pretty good when they're right.
That high-wheeler engine was maybe one of the worst that you all...
Sometimes, you know, getting them old things started was...
Yeah.
I know that one Dick had, I started here one day with a 3/4 drive ratchet handle that long. Cranking. That's the first time I had to run for years, you know. But some of these other ones, those old carburetors, it's pretty tough to get started.
And then there was that C-30 school bus that the guy had been hauling goats in.
Oh, yeah.
And you all built that piece by piece back with new metal and...
Yeah.
Yeah, we got it all stripped apart. Put an engine in it.
Yeah.
Had brakes on, you could move it around. But he sold it.
It's another day's work, Jeff. It's another day's work. That's the way I look at it. Another day's work.
But I know when you were a little younger, you'd come back down after supper and you might stay till way past bedtime.
I have stayed many a night till 4 o'clock in the morning when I was working on the overroad truck. Never even start the job till 2 o'clock when they'd get here with the parts from Kansas City or from the other end when I was working on Mid-American motor freights. And then the people come up from down in Florida and the southern part of Louisiana and Texas with their independent haulers with the equipment that wasn't up to date and water in their airlines and stuff. And I've had all kinds of problems with them in the middle of the night trying to get them to go.
You want to tell us an F-30 or a 1020 story?
Well, to make a long story short, I think we might visit about the F-30. I worked for a man at Macomb, Illinois when I was a kid, and he had a fairly late model F-30 that Montgomery Ward knobs come that way from the factory, and burned white gas, unleaded fuel, and that was a horse on that black Dumbo up there. In the second gear, we could plow with a 4-bottom plow like nobody's business, 7 inches deep. And normally he used a 3-bottom plow with that tractor and run in 3rd gear with it. And being just a young person, we always like to hear that old girl bark like a young fox, you know, when they stuck the plow in the ground at the end of the field and pulled it out. And as my dad had a 1020, and then in 29 he lost it in the Depression, and then when we finally got on his feet a little bit to start farming again, he bought a Fordson, and that likes a little bit being a tractor, but it did plow one way or another if you could get it started. And my uncle and I pulled a pan of it and tightened the rods in it one day, and he went up. My dad took it to the field to plow, and he went just about 3/4 of the way across the field, and one of the rods seized up on it and snapped the rod off at the end of the wrist pin, and it kept the whole block out of the bottom. The wishbone dropped down and everything. So my dad traded it for a regular farm awl. So that's about the, outside of working out, that's about the only equipment we ever had on the farm.
That regular wasn't quite the tractor that F30 ever was.
No, but it was a good in its place. It was a 25 model. It was real good in its place. And we burned straight gas in it. We didn't burn no diesel fuel or no tractor fuel in it. Get all of it out that we could get out, you know.
Yeah. Kind of going back to the trucks, would you like to talk about the high wheeler, the 2-cylinder engine, starting from there and go right up through the all the Diamond series?
Well, they get big old 2-cylinder horses. They was all air-cooled up until 1912. And in 1912 they come out with a water-cooled with a little smaller bore than the air-cooled. And they was more, as far as I'm concerned, they was more economical and more trustworthy than the air-cooled was. But my dad-in-law lived in North Dakota, Philip, North Dakota, and he had a 1912 water-cooled, and he hauled the mail with, when it was 30 below zero, with that thing. I don't know how the man lived or how he ever got it started up there, but he carried the mail, go up one day to another city, pick up the mail, and come back the next day in 20-degree below zero weather. And I don't know how them old toughies ever stood such thing as that. But that was one reason I wanted to build a 1912, because we used his pictures of his car and we copied the pictures that he had of his mail truck. With he used a 1/4-inch rope tied all the way around the wheels, made chains out of them in snow that was 3 foot deep, and just go trudging right along.
Then they came out with that slope nose. Was that a Waukesha?
Well, some of them were, and some of them were like homey. Depends on, you know, we've had them right here, rebuilt them for people. And the 21 was still a 2-bolt main, and then 23 they started out with 3 main bearings on those, and we have a couple of those sitting in the back room back there yet, you know. Of course, we built them. The oil pumps in them was made just like a squirt cam. It had a little plunger that went up to the camshaft, and with an intake it sucked the oil in, and on the downstroke it pushed back, and you can get about a pound and a half of pressure if you done real good. Flatheads, the 233s, I'm more familiar with them than anything because I used them in 4 different trucks that I had when I was trucking, haul logs and tray boats and stuff with, but I had to put brown light transmissions in them to get enough power to come out of the woods with 7-ton on, or spreading lime, either one. You had to have it on plowed ground. You couldn't move it. There's one thing about a brown light transmission in a K5, you better never give it more than a fast idle, or to walk through both back axles at the same time. But they got the water done, and they'd run 50 downhill with 7-ton on, and they'd run 4 or 5 miles an hour on a grade. But see, time wasn't so precious then. Like 35, 40 cents an hour, 50 cents an hour at the most. So it wasn't so precious as it is now. So many people now is buying these old trucks and fixing them up but don't know anything about them. And they expect to go out here with a K7 or a K8 and run with these 600 Cummins and 600 Cats and 400s and so on. They've got a great big surprise coming. Just can't be done.
The silver diamond, the blue diamonds, they were a little improvement.
Yes, quite a bit. Quite a bit of improvement. They run cooler, and especially when you got in the bigger diamonds, you know, like the 264s and the black diamond, and so on and so forth. They was pretty darn good horses. They sure was, and they was just the forerunner of the 282, which come out in 51, I guess. The 282 had come out in 51, and then the 308 come out in 53. Then 55, the 308s were updated on the exhaust and intake manifold and the carburetor, and then it really helped them a whole lot. But they kept growing with the time as they went along.
The red diamond 450, now that was in a 501. You had some of those, haven't you?
Yeah, we've rebuilt 450s, and we built 501s that the people use in the WK-40 International Farm Tractors in the East, making pull tractors out of them. We made several engines and shipped over there to put in WK-40, and they liked them real well on the 450s. So I don't know how I went an engine. I never liked to turn them over 2150 in a truck, but them pulling tractors that they build over in the east, southeast, they turn them things up to 4,000 RPM. It's kind of hairy, I know.
Now the last diamond series was the BG, is that correct?
I think. I'm not sure without checking, but I think about 54, maybe 55, I think. Quit using that engine.
The diamonds, yeah.
Yeah. And now they got 2 half a diamonds, and they sure don't make 3 diamonds.
Well, Pappy, I've known you for several years, and we've had a lot of good times at roundups and different truck shows and so forth. But the first truck I remember was that old green, you called it, the 39D model. And first time you blew past me on 36 Highway, pulling Betty's little 34 pickup, I knew darn good and well that wasn't a typical 213 engine in that truck. So you want to tell us what you did with that old 39 to make it run like that?
Well, it wasn't nothing for that truck when I wasn't pulling anything to run 65 real easy on the interstate where you had plenty of room. But when I used to pull my 34, whether I limited myself to 50 miles an hour on account of safety. But after all, you get all that arm going, you might have to stop it in a hurry. And when somebody pulled out in front of you or something, it got pretty hairy when the whole green was skidding sideways this way and then this way like this. And I had that to happen one time. And I said to be no more of that.
Now, you had a little secret, and I don't know whether you want to share it with us or not, but those old engines didn't carry much oil pressure.
Didn't what?
Didn't carry much oil pressure, and I know you
Well, the only reason they didn't carry good oil pressure is because they didn't know how to build one.
You had the secret, you could.
And another thing, there was a guy in the Red Power magazine. I was going to answer that boy a good many years ago. He said you couldn't get out of the county with a flathead international without burning the valve. The problem of it is that boy did not know anything about what was available for the flathead engines. And if you used the ones that was made for butane, exhaust valves and intake valves both, you could go for 50, 60,000 miles without, and I can run 60 pounds of oil pressure at 50 miles an hour on any flathead that was ever built.
Well, I know you're known for Mr. Flathead. In fact, you called yourself, what, the Flathead Connection in some of your ads. I think I heard you referred to as the Flathead Connection in Hemmings. At any rate, you were pretty well known for your expertise on that.
Well, I kind of specialize in them because people say, well, they're just an old piece of junk. I tell you what, the engineering on them was great. The engineering on them is something that some of that engineering that they had on them then was just like they're starting to use now on the foreign cars. But it was timed oiling, what they call timed oiling. They get oil at a certain time on a certain stroke. And until you learn the basics of that, how it works and everything, then if you could get 20 pounds at the best out of cold, or maybe 40 cold and 10 pounds of idling, and maybe 5 pounds of idling on just an ordinary flathead. But I always build them to run 60 and 65 pounds of oil pressure out on the highway and idle on 40. But there's a lot to it. I mean, it's not just, just take the flathead and tear it up and scatter a bunch of parts and put it together. And it's got to be right, and it'll live. It'll live good.
Well, and that's why you've been referred to, I think, as Mr. International in our circle. And you build a number of engines. You had a lot of good customers and following. Can you tell us a little bit about some of your various customers? I know we got one mutual friend, George Mitchell. Got some unique trucks. Would you like to tell us a little bit about some of your more unique trucks that you've run into? Some of the people you've met in this hobby.
Well, there's the thing about tinkering with this antique stuff. You win a lot of friends, and like I met George Mitchell a few years ago up north here at a show, and he had his 35 C30 up there, and I'd heard about George Mitchell for quite a few years. And I walked over to him and I said, "Are you the George Mitchell that I hear about, international?" And he said, "Yes, I am." I said, "I don't want to be a smart aleck, and I don't want to feel rude to you, but you know, you got your windshield seal in backwards, upside down on your 35. He said, "Well, I knew that thing it wasn't working like it's supposed to." He said, "It leaks all over, not just part of it." And so I shared with him, and he had his 41 International that's never been licensed. It's a cowboy, and the company that had it was using it for spare parts. They bought it during the war and set it back so they could have parts for the trucks. And George bought it in later years. He was short one door handle, And we was up up here at Waukee Highway at that same show. And he said, where in the world can I find the door handle for that truck? Oh, I said, is that all you like in making it complete? And he said, that's all he liked. I said, if you got a screwdriver, take the door handle out of my truck and put it in yours. Because I'm not that fussy about whether it's original or whether it's not. So and from that day on, he's been a tremendous friend.
And you visited his place. You know what a collection that man has. You want to tell him about some of George's vehicles, from his high-wheelers to his...
Well, I don't think either one of us, I or Jeff, I don't think we counted them, but I estimated over 60 restored trucks, besides some of the trucks that were still in the rough we didn't even figure on. He's got, and they're all good stuff, and a lot of his vehicles he bought was particularly real low mileage. And he's got 3 high-wheelers. And there's one of them I ain't seen yet that he just bought here 3 or 4 years ago. But George Mitchell is a good mechanic. He's a good craftsman. Because he can build about anything that anybody else can build. And a good friend like that. And then Mr. John Lamb, we call him he's known all over the world, not just in the United States, he's known all over the world about being Mr. High-Wheeler. And if anybody is looking for High-Wheeler information, up until he died last winter, somehow, some way, his name always come up and they give him a jingle, and he was always tickled to death to help somebody with information about it.
How about some of your other IH friends you might want to share with us? I know you go to Scout Connection quite often, and you want to tell us about some of the other people you've come in contact with over the years?
Lynn Faith and Dave up at Scout Connection up at Fort Madison Highway. We depend on them some for some used parts for later models. They've got 250 trucks on their yard, all in the 50s and up, from the 50s up, and they kind of depend on me for information about the old stuff, and I depend on them to give me some information on later model stuff, and we work together just like this.
Well, I know what makes this hobby interesting to me, and I'm sure it is for you, is the people that you meet and the friends that you make. And as you know, we need to get the younger guys like Jeff involved. Do you have any advice you might give to a younger man like Jeff that would want to get into doing what you're doing now? Do you have anything you'd like to say to the younger generation that are trying to break into this?
Well, I'll say this much. I know several people that was into it, that was young, and that's trying to use books and computers and different means of advertisement and stuff, that I'm not coming against them at all, none whatsoever, but they didn't make it. They just couldn't make it. It's a touchy business. You've got to really know what people are looking for, and not according to the numbers. You've got to actually know what they are and what they're doing and what year it is and what series it is. That's one thing I have trouble with my customers. They order something, they don't tell me what year it is, what series it is. They just send me a check and expect me to know exactly everything about their truck. What I do, get by all right if they'll give me the year and the series and the model.
Well, I know you've helped thousands of IH people across the country, and you get orders from all over the world, I assume. I know you've shipped parts overseas and all across the country. Is there anything that stands out in your mind, some of the more unique international trucks or vehicles that you've run across or had the privilege to work on?
No, not but really there's a lot of vehicles that we go to, you know, and some of the meets and stuff, maybe some that I had never saw before, and everything takes my eye. I'm kind of like my wife about everything she sees she wants, you know. But when it comes to trucks, I can't have everything I see. But anyhow, the thing of it is, it's not so much the advertisement that you get, it's the word of mouth advertising that is what really helps you when you're talking about building engines and welding and stuff like that. We get people from over in England and places. One guy had a D2 and he broke the end off the starter, couldn't find one. I said, oh, if you can't find it, if you're done looking, send me yours and I'll fix it for you. And he did. And then another man over on the East Coast, we fixed several antique fire engine exhaust manifold rebuilt them for fire equipment restorators. You know, they just, they take something in on the manifold or something like that into ordinary welding shop, and they start shaking their heads like this before they ever get to them. You know, to tell them what they want. And
I guess I should ask you about your computerized part system then, should I? I guess we shouldn't talk about your computerized part system.
My part system completely is a wooden pencil with an eraser on it, and the erasers wore out all the time from the mistakes I made. But I could have all the electronic junk there is in the world, I wouldn't know how to run it.
Well, I know you still advertise in Hemming magazine, and you made a comment the other night that when they get through with the internet and so forth, put it in your own words like you told me the other night. When they get through chasing through the internet and so forth, then they go to Hemmings and contact you.
Well, I tell all that comes to me for something that's real rare that I don't have. Well, we tried this on the internet, and we tried that on the internet, and the fish net and the squirrel net and all the other nets. I said, whenever you get completely tired of doing that, I'll try to help you. And I mean that. I mean that.
Well, Pappy, it's been a pleasure for me all these years to know you, and we got a lot of mutual friends. I've really enjoyed dealing with you through the years. You've been a personal friend. And I just want to thank you and your staff for all the help you give all of us IH people over the years.
Well, thank you for coming. Have a good day. Every day is good, so some's better than others.
Right.
Some's hotter than others, and some's colder than others. But anyhow, it's a good day.
It sure is.
This video was produced to preserve an important part of International Harvester history. Pappy has restored countless IH trucks for himself and others throughout his long career, as well as supplying complete engines, parts, and information to countless customers all over the world. Pappy remains an incredibly valuable source for hard-to-find parts and priceless help for all IH collectors, both professional and amateur. He can be reached at Vance Garage, 2832 Market Street, Hannibal, Missouri, 63401, or by phone 573-221-7767.